You're listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show, Africa's premier entertainment law show empowering the African artist. And now, your host, attorney, speaker, visionary, game changer, Ms. Uduak.
Hey AMO people, it's your one and only certified game changer, Miss Uduak. Welcome to the 78th episode of the AfricaMusicLaw.com show. The Africa Music Law Show is a show that is about the business of empowering the African artist and the creative industry at large here in the U.S. and across the African continent. Today, we are talking about the Tiwa Savage case, specifically focusing on her response to Tee Billz, her husband, and the implications from a business and legal angle with respect to her communications and what she said in a 45-minute interview that she granted to the press regarding her husband's statements on social media. Now, if you missed episode number 77, go back and listen to it. I think this particular episode gives a lot of context on what we're talking about, but you certainly can hear our views on her husband's behavior and how to deal with that situation. So make sure that you listen to episode number 78. Today I have two wonderful guests that agreed to give up a little bit of their time on a weekend to make sure that we get this information to you, since it's just been so much drama this past 48 hours or going into 72 hours now. The first guest is Uwam Oduak. Ms. Uwam is an attorney and partner at AB2 Law Group PC based in Sacramento, California, USA, where her practice areas focuses on family law, business law, which includes contract drafting, negotiation and litigation, general civil litigation, and crisis management for brands, talents, and businesses. Ms. Uwam is licensed to practice in California. She can be reached via email at uwam, UNWAM, at ebitulawgrp.com. The second guest is Fawoemi Onyekonsola, who is a founding partner at LegalByte, a boutique law firm servicing the creative industries in Nigeria. She has the music, film, and fashion portfolios of the firm. Onyekonsola, popularly referred to as FOSA, has successfully pioneered the emergence of many revenue streams for consortium of producers for the publishing of their catalogs. She also played a pivotal role in daily management and administration of the SARS Academy, an NGO pioneered by SARS, a top-ranking music producer in Nigeria. Popularly known in the telecommunications value-added services, she has brokered many licensing and publishing deals for a host of artists. Foza also doubles as a business manager for singer Chi. She can be reached via email, officialfoza@gmail.com, or on Twitter at FOZADOZA. And then there's me, Uduak Oduak. I go by Miss Uduak for short. I'm the founder of Africa Music Law, and I'm also a partner and co-founder of AB2 Law Group PC, where I handle my firm's intellectual property law, media, business, fashion, and entertainment law practice areas. For 15 years as an attorney, I have had the privilege of litigating a wide variety of cases in California courts. I've also handled a variety of entertainment deals for clients in the USA, Africa, and Asia, including network television and licensing deals. My work and contributions to the creative industry has been recognized by numerous organizations, including the National Bar Association, and featured in prestigious legal publications in the USA, ABA Journal, and the California Lawyer Magazine. If you'd like to reach me, there's several ways to do that. You can do so via email at africamusiclaw@gmail.com. You can directly contact me at uduak, UDUAK, at ebitulawgrp.com, or you can catch me on Twitter at UDUAK Law. Now, quickly on how to subscribe to the show. It's relatively easy. Go directly to the website at www.africamusiclaw.com to subscribe. You can also subscribe via poddirectory.com, poddirectory.com. If you have an Android, you can find us on Stitcher Radio. For iPhone or iPad users, you can find us on iTunes. Please rate us and also leave comments on iTunes so we know how we're doing. For sponsorship inquiries, feedback, or you'd like to appear on the show as a guest, please email me at africamusiclaw@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast show, so subscribe so you know what is going on. Definitely, if you're part of the industry, whether you're stateside or on the continent or even in Asia, and you want to stay on the pulse of the business of music, certainly on the continent side, then you definitely need to subscribe not only to the podcast, I would say, but definitely to the newsletter as well. So we are ready to get started. The Entertainment Law Roundtable in this particular podcast episode is subdivided into three big areas. We first take on family law matters, then we take on business law matters, and then we go into criminal law and tort law issues. Now, under the family law matters, we subdivide it into several pocket areas. Mental health issue, the lack of care and cheating identified by Tiwa in her video, the lack of financial care of the child and her home in general that we identified as well, and then finally divorce under that, since she's pretty clear that she's not doing this anymore with Tee Billz. She's moving on with her life. On the business law aspect, which is the second umbrella that we cover, we deal with the management of the business. We deal with the artist-manager relationship. We look at the shareholder relationship. We look at the executive role. We also look at, just in general, business practices or best business practices to avoid issues like this. And then finally, we close out with the criminal law implications in this case. The Tiwa Savage talks about her husband openly being sought after, it appears, by the EFCC, which is federal prosecutorial-like agency in Nigeria. She also talks about his blatant drug use, specifically cocaine and substance abuse. So we talk about that, but we don't stop at criminal law. We feel that there are implications on the tort law with respect to the issue of defamation. So we definitely also cover that. A final word before we take our break. What I will really emphasize is that for everyone that's listening to this, I ask that you share this. This is important information, and we're so lucky to have two dynamic attorneys that have shared their time. This is stuff that people pay an arm and leg for. It is really great content, and I'm asking that you do, because our industry is seeing a shift, and ultimately to our society is definitely seeing a shift. And the big shift is major issues in the substance abuse part, major issues in artist health. Even when substance abuse is not involved, how people are taking care of themselves is creating a lot of mental distress, a mental breakdown. Some of our artists are walking around heavily drugged up, walking around on a global scale. Also, we're seeing as a result of this really bad habits, an increase in violence even within the industry. So it's very, very important stuff. Let's not be so quick and excited to put in damning information or the terrible stuff our artists even put out there about themselves, so our audiences can enjoy, laugh, whatever, but we don't and are unwilling to educate. We have a duty to educate. It's critical if we want a sustainable industry, because at the rate we're going, we may very well be in big, big trouble ahead. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show. Africa's premier music business and entertainment law show, empowering the African artist.
Welcome back, everyone, to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show with Miss Uruak. Today, I have the two attorneys I already introduced you to. Our central topic is, should Tiwa Savage have talked about Tee Billz? And specifically, what are the business and legal implications of her complete tell-all? For those who are joining us for the first time, let me get briefly into the facts in case you're not aware of this case. Following a very public shaming of Tiwa Savage by her husband, Tunji Balogun, a.k.a. Tee Billz, who was a former manager turned husband, where he accused Tiwa of infidelity, neglect, and emotional abuse. He abused her mother, he threatened and later attempted suicide. Tiwa granted an explosive video interview to the press. In the interview, which occurred less than 24 hours after Tee Billz' suicidal attempt, Tiwa pulls no punches. She accused Tee Billz of being a drug addict, with his choice being cocaine, a deadbeat father, emotionally abusive, financially inept, adulterous, fathering a child out of wedlock. She claimed or insinuated he was wanted by Nigeria's Federal Crime Prosecutorial Agency, EFCC, for some sort of seemingly criminal activity involving a 45 million Naira loan. I think that turns out to be about $40,000. She confirmed he, in fact, had mental health issues, of which he had been receiving treatment, but did not seem committed to treatment because he always quit halfway through. She also confirmed he in fact did try to commit suicide, and also that she was concerned her tell-all video would possibly trigger another attempt to hurt himself. I quote her, "In fact, as we're doing this interview, I'm worried that he might see this interview and it might trigger something and make him really go and do something bad. I'm worried." She followed up immediately after that with, "I don't want my son to grow up and hear, God forbid, that his father committed suicide." She revealed she fired him as a manager because he was allegedly stealing from her, and that is when all the issues really began. In addition, she claimed he was allegedly commingling personal and business funds, and when she challenged him, he failed to see anything wrong about it and refused to change. She also declared she was through with the marriage, did not want a divorce, but was forced to get one given the circumstances. I'm going to start first with the family law issues. I want to take it in pocket areas here. Family law issues, and specifically I want to highlight a few things, Ms. Uwam, and that is the mental health aspect specific to family law. It's been a split opinion. Half of the people saying, you know what, she should absolutely have done all the tell-all. Who cares about his mental health? After all, he was spilling about her and should have thought about that. And then the other half said she should have waited. Let's address mental health in the family unit, focusing on the family law aspect.
Well, as an artist, you're not precluded from all the challenges that other people face in their lives. And I think that sometimes we tend to worship this artist way too much. And we don't give them room to be humans and to have their problems and solve their problems. So from that perspective, my taking on the mental health component is that it didn't appear that she was very tuned into that issue. At least she came across to me as not very well tuned into that, which makes me believe that she's not as informed or educated about mental health issues as she should be, given that she's been living with a spouse that she claims has been struggling with this issue for quite some time. So when people struggle with mental health issues, generally speaking, they don't talk, act the same way what we all perceive as normal behavior, irrational thoughts. So, an irrational thoughts example is, oh, your mother is a witch. It's like, are you kidding me? So those kinds of things are examples, or even going on Facebook like that and ranting in the way he did. So there are some chemical imbalances. There are various reasons why people end up with mental health issues. Based on her own facts, it appears that he's got some drug problems, alcohol problems. So cocaine is what they call an upper. It's a stimulant. It goes to that your pleasure center of your brain. And anyway, so, you put all those things together, and then with all the other issues that are going on in the marriage as well as business context, you could see how he could end up with a breakdown. So I got the impression that either she's not taking that mental health very seriously, or she doesn't care. Like, she's so pained at this point that she doesn't care about that. Not that she doesn't care about him overall, but her mind can't even wrap around his needs right now because she's just so overwhelmed with the pain that she's having to endure as a result of this process. So from that perspective, should she have gone on to do this interview? My answer is no. When someone's that on the verge like that, and I think in her interview, didn't she say something along the lines of, she was concerned that if he hears this at this time, what he might do. So if you're aware of that, then why are you granting this kind of interview? You know what I mean? I think that she could have still been able to talk about things in general without being too specific, and preserve some aspect of that process of healing for him. And she can always come back later on and talk about this. It's not, you don't have to do it all at once. There's room to come back and revisit this issue and give a more in-depth interview about it. So that's my perspective.
Fosa, let's go to you. What about the fact that a lot of people have raised, and it seems like a valid point in Nigerian society, you're currently right now in Nigeria, that, look, if Tee Billz in fact had committed suicide, nobody will ever hear Tiwa's side of the story. And if it came much later, they're going to be blaming her for the rest of her life for that suicide that was committed. So can you specifically address the mental health of whether she should have spilled or not spilled?
All right. So I'm going to come from a very personal, because this is very personal to me, because I grew up around this kind of situation, and unfortunately I lost someone to this kind of situation, So it's very touchy and personal for me. Do I think Tiwa Savage should have done the interview? Yes, totally. And this is maybe I'm being too sentimental or not objective, but this is from my own view. We downplay mental issues a lot in Nigeria. You know, when Tee Billz posted those messages on social media, on Instagram, I immediately said that someone needs to take this guy for a mental checkup. But Nigerians generally, we just say, oh, that's a white man disease. You can't be depressed. It's not a black man's disease and stuff like that. So, but on the flip side, for me, because Nigerian women or black women or African women generally are very quiet when it comes to family issues, not because they want to be quiet, but because they are so scared of society stigmatization. So they are so quiet about it. So for Tiwa to come out, number one, she's a celebrity. Number two, she has a lot of people looking at her and up to her. For her to come out and spill that much, I believe that she had added up to, she has added up to the last, and she said, you know what, I'm going to do this, and this is for me alone. And because I feel like at that point, she's like, if she dies also, nobody's going to be, is not going to pay anybody at the end of the day. If everybody should keep quiet. Tiwa Savage goes, she's talking about how they were both together. And last year, I read also after her pregnancy, when she gave birth, she also spoke that she also had postnatal depression. Do you understand? Where she was saying that she had that. So when he came out and is blaming everything on depression, yeah, we totally understand that, yes, maybe, you know, a lot of things have gone on. She was not around, which I think she admitted to an extent that probably she wasn't the most domestic wife ever, which probably maybe she tortured him emotionally, or which I think she admitted to. But, you know, this is a marriage where both of us have to work it out. But I feel like it's just been unfair to the African woman, where she has to be the one to always, 95% of the time, always try to make things work, when both of you are the ones having so much fault in the relationship. Now, this is my own angle. Tee Billz has gone on social media to say she's a witch. My dad died. My mom was not a witch. And the first person they said killed my dad was my mom. You know, and now you've put it everywhere that the mother took your manhood for her success, and say, God forbid, he had jumped over the cliff. This is me, I'm a normal human being. Without my mother doing anything, they still told me that my mother was a witch, she killed my dad. What do you think will have gone wrong? What do you think will have happened to Tiwa Savage? She would probably be hanging on the cross right now. Everybody's stabbing her, because we should not forget that even in as much as she's a celebrity, she's a Yoruba woman. She's an African woman. And unfortunately, the African women are the first person that kills when anything happens, the family comes and say, oh, you killed our son. But when the woman dies, the son never kills the woman.
So true.
So to me, should she have said it? Maybe she went a bit too far. Maybe she said a lot of things, but I just felt like she had added to a point that if she had not spoken at that point, she would have probably lost her mind. I mean, I saw her 2 weeks, I saw her, I think, at the NEC conference. That's like a week before. She was looking so graceful, and you could just see that. And when I saw that interview, I just saw that she must have been going through a lot to be able to keep up. I'm okay, I'm fine, but she's dying inside, which I feel is the worst kind of mental health that many of us in Nigeria go through, and we don't even know that we are sick, unfortunately. So she should have gone ahead with the interview. Totally, yes. Did she go overboard in some points? Maybe not. I don't think she did, but you know, like Miss Woman was saying that some people were saying that because he drew first blood, she should also, you know. I felt like it's slut shamed her. I mean, the worst thing you can do to kill an African woman is say that she slept with outsiders. Then you did not say just outsiders. She slept with the same circle, your friends in the same circle. I mean, that's too much embarrassment for an African woman. And probably before we'll keep quiet and cry and probably die. Like I said, I lost someone to that. That probably that's what will have happened to her, and everybody would be telling him sorry because it's the man. But when she came, I felt like, yes, she should have done that, and I don't think she should be. I don't know. That's it for me, basically.
Well, let me add my opinion. I completely disagree. I mean, I'm speaking directly from personal experience, and I'm going to be as transparent as possible because I don't want others to be transparent about mental health issues, and I'm not. I too lost someone last year. It was so shocking and so strong to mental health issues. And even beyond that, I know people, you know, that have gone through that in my life as well. So in spite of that, and how very emotional and shocking it was for me, still dealing with that actually, I still don't think it's justified what Tiwa did at the time. She should have spoken. Ultimately, yes. Timing is everything. You're on video on 2 key points. Forget everything else Tiwa has said. 2 key points. The first one is he may see this video and it potentially will trigger him to harm himself in the same manner, which is terrible, or in a bad way. The second key point that she raised is, I don't want my son going through life knowing that his father committed suicide. If you know that, forget even about protecting Tee Billz, protecting your son. If we're going to get that personal, you start off with waiting. What is wrong with waiting? Just a little wait. You've waited all this time. You're not staying with him or living with him. You said you guys no longer live together. What is the problem? Why couldn't you wait? You acknowledge on video. So you have the intent and the mind frame to understand the gravity of what you're dealing with. Yet you continued with that. So I think it shows the void and the real need for us to understand mental health. And Ms. Uwam already pointed a key point that, hey, you know what? The thoughts are irrational. The thoughts are irrational. And as an industry, and even the public knew it was irrational. So I really didn't see a place for that. Ms. Uwam, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, Foza, everything you're saying makes total sense. And I totally agree with all of that. And had Tiwa Savage, and this is where I know we're going to eventually get to this. This is why we continue to say that artists should get good advice, right? Artists should get good counsel. They should have good, entertainment lawyers around them, good managers and so forth. Because if Tiwa Savage had been properly advised, she could have made this interview all about mental health. She could have talked about the struggles of mental health. She could have talked about, as a community, we don't talk about it. She could have talked about resources that are available for people to go and get mental health help. She could have talked to her whole own struggle and trying to understand the illness and try to, adapt to it, and the help that she sought, or the inability to get help, or the struggle to understand it. And that would have been a perfect angle to address this problem. Because, like, you're right, Foza, most everybody who heard this said, something's wrong with this guy, or he can't possibly be okay up there. And it turns out he's not okay up there. Whether it's alcohol-induced, drug-induced, mental health breakdown, it doesn't matter. The point is, we know he's having that. She confirms that he has that. And so I think this part of it is talking about mental health, period. How do you deal with people who are struggling with mental health issues? Shaming them, embarrassing them to the world is not how you help or support someone with mental health issues. The science out there does not support that approach works. And so if you go and shame him everywhere else, and he's already feeling like crap, within himself, then you're further solidifying his worthlessness and his hopelessness. And all he's going to do is go ahead and pursue taking his life. And that's how mental health works. And I think as a society, we have to start getting serious about getting educated. For that is absolutely correct that we tend not to address that. We don't talk about it. We act as if it's somebody else's disease. We are Black, we're strong, we're Africans. Oh my God, we're Nigerians. Okay. So there's no way we go through this kinds of stuff. And so from that perspective, that's why I'm saying she shouldn't have given this interview in this manner. She could have still granted an interview, but she could have used this as an important platform to lend her voice as an artist to an important issue and talk about her vulnerability in dealing with it and empower other people in the communities. When you talk about people with mental health issues, no one's saying that you're tolerating their behavior. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. You don't have to tolerate anyone's nasty behavior simply because they have mental health issues, but you have to address the most important need, safety. That's always number one. Emotional safety, physical safety first. Everything else is secondary. Medical safety as well.
And I would just add a final point. Foza, you raised a great point about the postnatal depression. Now imagine Tiwa going through that. Roles are flipped. So there's a possibility of that sensitivity going through exact same thing. And then her husband is the one doing this to tell all interview about all their life stories, regardless of whose side is right or wrong. We're not even getting into right or wrong on this one. But imagine him doing that on postnatal depression. We've heard all kinds of things on postnatal and seen some crazy stories. So I don't think it's justified when it's flipped either way. Any other thoughts you want to add before we go to the next big area that we want to cover with respect to the family law aspect?
No. Just it.
Okay. So the other key point that she raised is a lack of care and cheating. I'm going to highlight some few facts that she said. And what, again, I want to discuss is, number one, does it justify the tell-all, assuming that we remove the mental health or even keep the mental health part? And also, Ms. Uwam, talking about some of the legal implications. I know we'll get to divorce later on. Some key highlights. She mentioned that they got pregnant again and they were trying to figure out how to afford a new baby. She traveled to Jamaica. In Jamaica, she had a miscarriage. She shared the bloody pictures of the miscarriage during the video interview. She returns back to Nigeria, and while she's sleeping, she saw a number ringing with the tag Edible Catering. And she's like, Edible Catering company at 2 a.m. in the morning. So she snoops and finds out he was cheating. And she also saw a text message to this so-called Edible Catering person saying, you knocked me out last night. It was a great night, among other text messages they shared. Focusing on the issue of lack of care and cheating. Let's start off with you, Ms. Uwam. Again, can you address that and the implication?
From the standpoint of being an artist and sharing your personal life, I mean, you know what? That's really up to the artist. As attorneys advising, our clients, you're always concerned about their brand. You're always concerned about their image, wanting them to learn how to control their image well, because that's their source of income. So if your image gets messed up, then your source of income goes out the door. So from that perspective, you could argue yea or nay, she should have discussed it or not. Well, what that just simply tells me that she's carrying a lot of pain. So I don't know too much. I don't know that I have an opinion either way that she shouldn't have shared that. Is it a lot of information? Yes, but a lot of women in Nigeria and across the world who go through this every day in their lives, every single day. So again, what I really would have appreciated in an interview is an angle of empowerment, not just for herself, but for those across the world, So if you're going to address these kinds of things, perhaps suggesting ways that are healthy, effective ways to get help to deal with this, because a lot of women are dealing with this. But just telling the story, and there's no answer for how do you manage this kind of crisis in your home when your husband is doing this, it's just it's just there. So, but as far as, she should have said it, no, but again, I go back to the context of the mental health. This again does all it does to tarnish his image and make him look like dirt, like, unworthy completely. And so from that perspective, again, if he's struggling through some things, perhaps this is not the time to begin to, talk about this. It doesn't mean you should never talk about it, but maybe this is not the time, to get very specific about it.
Rosa, you were already sort of alluding to the fact that a lot of women, Nigerian women, keep silent. This is a way of life. So can you speak a little bit more about that lack of care and cheating aspect?
I'm not married, so I really cannot say, but I've seen from the outside what is happening, and I've been in different pseudo relationships outside. I've seen my friends, and it's becoming a norm. Infidelity is becoming a norm. Like the men. And the part that annoys me the most is that they don't want it they don't want it reciprocated to them. I mean, you can't. We're just in a simple relationship of I'm a boyfriend, I'm your girlfriend. You are having the side chick and the main chick and the extra chick, and you expect me to be cool with it. And when I flip out or I say something, I'm overreacting. Or I think it's becoming a normal thing in this culture. To have more than one girl. You have the girl to marry, and you have the girl that you just play about with. So is infidelity a normal thing in Nigeria? Almost a normal thing. It's just you rarely find a man that is very faithful to one woman. On the flip side also, you can also be argued that women also are already going down this path because maybe they've been so tortured, or I don't know, the coins are changing or whatnot. But I'm strongly against infidelity. From the Christian standpoint, from moral standpoint, from normal, even health-wise, it's not proper. I mean, I've seen situations where the men go outside and bring disease back home to the woman that is innocent, and they keep quiet. Now, should Tiwa Savage have spilled this? I think if like Ms. Woman said, if properly PR and legally advised, she could have spinned it to her own favor. And honest, if I'm being honest in terms of branding, and I still think this situation is salvageable for her. In terms of spinning the PR and the media, maybe the marriage also, I believe anything is possible with proper counseling and proper, proper counseling and support from everybody, it might be redeemable. But everything from the look of it, I still think is very redeemable, and she can still spin the infidelity spill to her favor.
I think one could argue that this is not about trying to empower the entire world or whatever. This is a woman going through her own personal struggle, and as Ms. Uwama's pointed, is pained. So if she's pained, why should she sit there to try to be the voice for women and all the other stuff? She's just sharing her story based on what her husband has done and the implications in the Nigerian society that this woman cheated on her man. That affects her branding. I mean, she's the brand ambassador for Pampers, for crying out loud. That's a good wife kind of brand. Good wife, good mother, takes care of her home. And here she is being neglectful, being abusive. She argues he was abusive, but arguably he also put out information that she's abusive when you're throwing allegedly your guy out 5 times in a row out of your matrimonial home. That is abusive. Where is he supposed to go? Go hang out with somebody else? Among other things that he claimed about her. So I do agree with the general consensus that it's not necessarily our place to talk about the lack of care and cheating per se. It just probably validates the issue of mental health more. But we will tie it in pretty soon to the specific focus of divorce, because they do talk about divorce. Let's move on to the next topic area on the family law as a whole and societal cultural issues, and that is the lack of financial care of the child. Tiwa shares that her husband has never paid for anything for the child, not even quote unquote 1 naira. She says she takes care of all family expenses. She claims he has no money, but according to her, clearly uses the money for women. And also says that he loves to live above his means. Anyone want to add any specific things to that? Let's start with you, Ms. Uwam.
Again, for me, I'm taking this angle again back into the mental health zone. That's where I'm at with this. And because other than the mental health issue, really, Tiwa Savage could have granted this interview. And I mean, again, it may not have been the best way to do it from my own perspective of advising a client. I'm not quite sure that I would advise my client to do this kind of interview at this time. But notwithstanding that, she could have. But my main concern is the mental health component of this. So when you tell, in our African culture, we know that for men, the biggest thing about their manhood is their sexuality, right? Their ability to perform or please a woman, their pocketbook, right? The ability to provide. And then the other part is fatherhood, right? So when you are attacking any of those three elements, you're in essence attacking their manhood. So when he goes into that zone of, you don't take care of our child, again, you're putting a persona and image of this man that is really worthless, and if he's already struggling with societal problems, which comes from the sense of hopelessness and worthlessness, then you're adding to that. You're not helping to relieve that. And so you make a statement that you wouldn't want your child to grow up, with this burden of knowing that his father committed suicide, meaning that you understand that there's that relationship. She did say she would never deny him access to the child, which means she's also acknowledging that there's some type of a relationship between father and, is it a boy? And son. So when you put all of that in context, again, this may not be the best angle. The main issue for me for Tiwa and what I thought would have been the compelling reason for her to give this interview is more so from the infidelity standpoint. I understand that in of itself alone in our society and the way we are, and the fact that she's dependent on others people to buy her album can be very damning for her. So again, a PR that's structured properly that maybe addresses that kind of issue, acknowledges that my husband is going through some issues, acknowledging that we're all making efforts to try and get him the appropriate services. And while we're at it, as a result, in that state and condition, there are some damning and very inappropriate things he said that are not factually true. And that's what mental health does sometimes. You're irrational. And that's why they call it mental health. If it wasn't mental health, you'd be talking normal and you'd be sounding logical like every logical person should sound. So, that kind of spin to it and address that infidelity in that context. And let it be and go deal with what you got to do and then come back. You can give you can write a song and release your feelings through your song. You can write a book and release, your feelings through that avenue, or you can give an interview like she did and get a little more in depth if you feel the need to. Then the other thing I want to say is one thing parents have to remember, that child does not know everything that you know about their father. Okay. Especially at that age. All they know is it's dada. That's it. He loves his dad. They connect. It's only when kids get old enough to, rationalize and think things through that they start realizing, I don't like the way my dad does this, or I don't like the way my mom does this, and so forth. So as a parent, when you're dealing with that, you have to keep that in mind. Once you start putting stuff out there, eventually your children are going to see this stuff now. They're going to get old enough. And in a society where we mock people, we tease people, we deny people marrying into certain families because they have mental health issues, or they're poor, or whatever, or they're not well educated, you don't really want that over your child's head. That's just not, especially if you have a girl too. You may have a girl someday with somebody else, and all that stuff is out there. So anyway, that's just my perspective.
Foza, why should the African woman, specifically the Nigerian woman in this case, be the one with the burden to have to withhold information with respect to the financial care of the child, or things of that extent? What is your perspective on the information that Tiwa proffered about her husband taking care of the child and the family?
Yeah, like Miss Wam rightly stated, one of the masculine feature, one of the glorifying feature of a man in Africa is financial capability, and men generally, the African men generally are beginning to come to terms that the tides are changing. The African woman is more independent financially, and many of them are struggling to come to terms with that and properly manage their egos in this sort of relationship, which is affecting a lot of relationships, especially for the women. I mean, you hear an African man say that I can't marry a woman that is richer than me, or I can't marry a woman that earns more than me, which is to an extent not their fault, but because of the upbringing we all came out from. And the women also are coming out of that mentality that I have to depend on demand solely. But then again, let's look at it from this perspective that both of them are both exposed. They both were living in the UK before they came back to Nigeria. But
the US, they're Los Angeles based. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're be exposed to that independence, financial independence, like on both sides. So for Tee Billz that probably came back to Nigeria and saw that, okay, I'm still an African man, and for me to have a strong footing in my house and to control this woman that is larger than life, I have to my financials must be up to date, and to be able to cater for my family. But if he's not living up to that, sometimes it might get into the woman's head, like she now takes up all the whole respect, because she also mentioned it that because he wasn't providing, she had to work longer hours, she had to overwork herself to be able to keep up with the lifestyle that the family was living. But that it did not pay for anything at all, I would probably not agree to that to an extent. Maybe because I'm honestly thinking before she fired him, I think that was before the marriage, before the baby, or after that. I'm not too sure, but I'm sure it probably worked somehow, probably indirectly or directly as a manager, to make some money for the family. But that he didn't spend anything, I won't completely agree with. I don't have all the facts, but I don't think I'll completely agree with that to an extent. But it's important that we train our sons and our daughters to start coming to terms that you're fine to respect each other, whether financial independence or not. But the issue of respect in relationships needs to be retaught to both the female child and the girl child and the male child altogether, so that everybody comes to terms with this new age. They call it there's a term they have for it, disposal of culture, which I don't think it is, because they think that the woman's place is in the house, but everybody's is growing, the trend is growing, and I think everybody needs some re-education to that extent.
You're listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show, Africa's premier music business and entertainment law show, empowering the African artist.
Let me add my 2 cents. Tiwa wasn't blind going into this relationship about an allegation of being a deadbeat. In fact, before she got married, there was a young lady out of Los Angeles at the point she was getting ready to be married to Tee Billz that came forward and claimed that he had fathered 2 kids, which Tiwa doesn't deny, and was a deadbeat and had not been in touch with his kids for 3 years. And there were other subsequent things that happened over time. Every time, Tiwa got on social media, defended Tee Billz, and gave a completely different image about him. In addition, I'm not married, but I don't understand. What's the point of marriage when one person is down and you can't help? That's part of what marriage is, isn't it? At least if one person is down, the other person provides. Now, I'm not ignoring the issue and cheating and all, and definitely mental health. But I'm saying that I don't know that the financial part is that much of a big weight per se. And also, as we get into the business aspect of this case, I'll also further explain why I feel very strongly also about that. But that's my take on it. Ms. Uwam, you wanted to add something to it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit this. It would, to me, appears to be a complete disconnection when you say you don't think the financial weight is that big of a deal. It is that big of a deal when you have to carry the whole responsibility, and only people who've been in that position can understand taking care of yourself and taking care of other people who are dependent on you also. I think the bigger issue to me, and I think maybe that's what you're trying to suggest, is men do this all the time. So when you're in a marriage context and one person's finances is no longer coming in and you have to step up to help out, then yeah, it's not for purpose of this interview, it's not that big of a big highlight to point out that, yes, I'm the one carrying, the burden, especially since she didn't suggest that he never added anything, but she said that most of the trouble started after he got fired as manager. So that's what I would say about that. So it can be very stressful. It can be overwhelming. The pressure of the industry is enormous. This is not, we're talking about being an artist here. We're not talking about being a receptionist. So there are a lot of things you have to do that the work entails that can be very overwhelming and stressful. So when you have that additional burden of also making sure that all the needs in the home are met, that can be overwhelming. But you are right that it is a marriage. A marriage is a partnership, and so both of them should be working those things out. It should never feel like because one person is carrying the load, therefore you're more. Every day he wakes up, he has to hear you constantly say, I'm carrying the load, I'm carrying the load, I'm carrying the load. You both need to sit down and have some action plan. Okay, if you're carrying the load, how long are you supposed to be carrying this load? What is the move? What is the intentions of the family to move into a financial environment where contributions are coming from both sides? Or if contributions are not going to come from both sides, then action plan on, okay, if I'm not bringing this, what is the alternative stuff that I can be doing to eliminate some of that stress that you're going through as the breadwinner of the family? That's what I would like to add to that.
I obviously disagree that it is a disconnection. Prior to Tiwa getting married to Tee Billz and after the fact, there's no denial, and she says the same thing. Tee Billz has been providing for his family as a manager, which again, we'll get into that later on. Then I see no reason why you can't help with that and why that has to be part of a public information being shared with the public. I really don't see the relevance of it. Under a different context, different issue, maybe. But this context, I don't see the relevance of it. Foza, you were going to add?
Basically, everybody has said everything. I've said everything I have to say concerning that issue, basically. Like from the angle where you also mentioned, I forgot that part that when you said that she always defended him. She always defended him anytime someone called him a deadbeat. I feel that was born purely out of societal pressure. She being at that age, she's not yet married, and much is expected. But I feel like societal pressure had a big part to play in that situation.
And perhaps so, but the fact of the matter is a fellow woman from Los Angeles, just like you, a Nigerian American just like you, has 2 kids, saying, hey, you know what, this man has not been financially responsible at all for the kids, and you go and you defend. And then it turns out he is allegedly mimicking the same thing that you were noticed for. So what are we really complaining about? That's all I'm saying. It doesn't mean that his actions are justified. It's just saying that there was notice about this. So it can't be counted as yet another fault, yet another this, especially given the context of mental health. You were on notice about this. And in fact, he fought so many people off, and there were so many articles written all this whole time. And so many opinions about this. And in this particular interview, you acknowledged that people directly told you saw the red flags, and, you're woman enough to say, I made the wrong choice. And that's applaudable. But I don't think you get any extra sensitivity to the issue of lack of financial care of the child or even in the home, given the circumstances. Let's move and wrap it up on the family law part with specifically talking about divorce. Ms. Uwam, Tiwa and Tunji Tee Billz are from Los Angeles, California. 5 years ago, they moved to Nigeria. They got married. It's unclear whether they actually conducted their ceremony exclusively in Nigeria, because they had a traditional wedding first and then a white wedding in Dubai. So it's unclear whether they actually registered and got married in the U.S., particularly California. Nevertheless, since they're considering divorce, could you enlighten our audience on the issues of divorce and asset splits, on all those things involved, given the situation?
Well, I'm going to speak from the United States perspective, and either you or Foza can cover Nigeria. And, given that they're from California, and under the circumstances, getting a divorce will probably be beneficial to Tee Billz from California than getting a divorce from home out here. And even and for Tiwa also is beneficial in this end. To get a divorce here in the United States, in particular California, we're a no-fault jurisdiction, meaning you don't have to prove that anything was wrong with your spouse, or that he abandoned you, or he treated you this way or that way in order for you to get your divorce. All you have to say is, look, we no longer get along. We cannot, we have differences that just are not, they're irreparable. Therefore, we cannot continue this marriage, so we're getting a divorce. And it's that easy when it comes to, in terms of the causation, the reasons that you have to show as to why you're getting a divorce. I believe in Nigeria is a little differently and so forth. The other aspect is, I'm not quite sure how Nigerian law is in when it comes to property division. So, but I know here in California, especially since Tiwa married her husband before she really became a household name. So presumptively in California, a community asset, meaning money that belongs to the marriage, that comes out of the relationship. So the presumption is that assets that you acquire during the course of your marriage is community asset, meaning it belongs to the marriage. So a lot of her accomplishments, frankly speaking, during the course of this relationship, right, he would really get a lot of benefit from some of those assets that they've, incurred together. So to that end, it's a bit beneficial from him, from an asset perspective, for him to get a divorce here from California. Obviously, Tiwa has the ability to prove waste. You're not allowed to waste. So if you can have that evidence of showing that, yeah, we have money, but you wasted the community assets. So those community assets that you wasted is attributable to you. So therefore, there's no reason why we should come and retax the community now to come and split some of this money with you, when you've already, gotten rid of some of these assets anyways, by your own irresponsible behavior of denying the community the benefit of that income. So anyway, so from that perspective, she might be able to prove that and show that. From the child perspective, her doing this interview and literally disparaging him in public could be a problem for her. On the other hand, him going on social media and, and on the rants that he did and talking about her in the way he did is also a problem. So to that end, perhaps some counseling, for both parents to know how to speak positively of each other. Or even sometimes you get a ban that says you're not allowed to speak disparagingly about X, Y, and Z person, or this parent or that parent. You might get something like that. From Tee Billz perspective, if he's got some serious mental health issue, the chances of him getting custody of this child at this time, given his state of mind, will probably be minimal. At a minimal, if he does get it, it might be supervised visits, because they want to make sure that he's not a danger to himself or the kid. You don't want a situation where he goes and commits suicide, with the child and all that kind of stuff. So they definitely could, give more of a supervised visit at a minimum, or there might not even be a visit for a while until he gets, into some kind of a therapy or so forth. But it would be for both sides, the lawyers on both sides, to argue that and go about it. The reality is that because they have a child together, they're stuck together for a very long time, at least here in the United States, at least till the child is 18, 19 years old, for child support purposes and so forth. So child support, both parents are expected to contribute to the care of their children. Depending on who has the child, and the income disparities and so forth, you have to do some calculations to determine what child support amount will be, if any, from either parent, if there's joint or if one parent has predominantly custody of the child.
Foza, did you have something to add before I share a Nigerian divorce law rules?
No, I'll let you go. I'll let you go.
Okay, so in general, when you're talking divorce in Nigeria, the term that's used is that the divorce must be based on the ground that the marriage has been broken down irretrievably. Irretrievably means that the court will consider 8 different grounds under the act. Number 1, no sex. So once you marry, you should be consummating the relationship. So no consummation of the marriage is a ground. Number 2, adultery. So if Tiwa were to go show that, certainly she has the adultery aspect to show. Or allegedly has the adultery aspect to show. Number 3, conduct that is unreasonable, and by that it's meant to be rape, habitual drunkenness. She does claim that he is alcoholic. Sodomy, murderer, incarcerated in prison. He hasn't been incarcerated yet, but the criminal allegation she makes, who knows? Attempted murder of spouse, intent to or actual commission of serious bodily injury, inability to take care of spouse. She certainly alleges that he has an inability to take care of her and her family and the kid, the son. So that's under the rubric of conduct that is unreasonable. Number 4, abandonment. And for abandonment under Nigerian Family Law Act, it has to be for at least 1 year prior to the filing of the divorce petition. Number 5, separation. And with separation, it means living apart for a continued period of 2 years prior to the filing of the divorce petition, and no objection by the person you want to divorce from you. So you file for a divorce. The court says, how long have you been apart? You say 2 years. The court asks your spouse whether he or she will object to the divorce and whether he or she says no. The 6th ground is separation, living apart for a continued period of 3 years prior to the filing of the divorce petition. The 7th ground is failure to comply with a court order regarding marriage or the sexual rights or privilege of a marriage. And finally, the 8th ground is the death or reason to believe that your spouse is dead. Those are the grounds for divorce under the Matrimonial Causes Act, Chapters 220, Section 15 and 16 of the Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 1990. So you want to obviously, in Nigeria, consult with a family law attorney there. And if you're in California, certainly Ms. Uwam, who's a family law attorney, has explained how the rules overall work so that you have a basis of that basic understanding. Okay, so having talked about divorce, let's go into the big other area here, which is business law. And Fozer, I'll start off with you. Here are some of the highlighted facts that Tiwa talks about. She says that Tunji was stealing from her. She says, how do you steal from your wife? Direct quote from her. She said she had to perform at times for free because he was stealing and not reporting funds received for live performances. She said he was commingling funds with his personal account and their business account. She said in terms of splits for percentage of revenue received, she split it 60-40 favoring him, and sometimes 40-60, but for the most part 60-40. And then she says she's been covering for her husband for a long time. He incurs expenses, leaves tab running. She mentioned he borrowed 45 million naira and lost it. She's not sure whether he reinvested that into the business because she's just finding out. And she said there's an EFCC investigation with a case that has to do with an account number directly linked to the alleged borrowed $45 million. Let's focus in on business law in general. Are there some issues that specifically jump at you that should have been done or in place with respect to Tiwa? And let's start first from the firing of Tee Billz as a manager.
Okay. So typically, which I think is the same issue we treated with the P-Square case in terms of family, business, and I don't know whether there were any contractual documents in place that specifically stated this is the defining rule. But I feel, and I really what I would have advised is that before the marriage, before marriage, there should have been clear cut. This is business and this is family distinction. I feel like that's a lot of the family influenced the way business was done. But then again, this is another thing that was because 60-40 for a manager in favor of a manager is very odd in the industry. Standard practice is 20-25% at the most, and that's if your network as a manager is off the roof. So from the jump, industry standard practice is already being sidelined, maybe because of personal family interest or family influence to it. But then again, we should also not forget that she's also signed to 323, which is co-owned by both herself and Tee Billz. Now, earlier this year, he said that Tee Billz, the management company 323, signed an artist for management, and they also have other management contracts with other people. So my question now is that the 60-40 from which Tiwa Savage receives, like in terms of live performance and whatnot, does Tee Billz also, because she will also be, structurally, she will be remitting some money also to 323 as a company. So my question now is would Tee Billz as a director in the company also be getting shares after the 60-40 has been split? This is all just, but then again, she has the right to fire a manager if he's not performing, and I don't think it's anything personal. But if it wasn't clearly stated from the beginning, then they're going to have a bit of problem in terms of dissolving the relationship amicably, which is what I think spiraled down into this situation. So, basically that's my thoughts on that.
Ms. Owen?
Yeah, pretty much what we talked about when we handled the P-Square situation, which is you need to have clear attitude. It starts from your mindset before you even put the documentation. Because sometimes, folks, that people will put documentation down, right? But they don't practice it. So it's not just putting documentation. You have to practice it. Your mindset has to be, this is business, and it needs to work like that. It can't be, oh, okay, let's write it down as business, but then when we carry on, we're going to carry on as family. It doesn't work that way. So, and that's why in a lot of ways, it's better not to mix your relationship with your business if you can. Because when things fall apart, sometimes that will also affect your business. So from that end, they should have had something very clearly written out that spells out all each other's obligations or whatever, and what the actual reasonable compensation percentage is for what he's actually doing. It's not a situation of where you say, well, it's my husband now. No, I don't care if you want to make him provider of the home. You have to use your business sense. You're a business person trying to be in a business industry. Carry yourself that way, and then get the advice. Foza is there. Hire her. Hire anybody else that's in Nigeria as an entertainment attorney to give you good advice so that they can help you guys, structure this stuff. And you don't have to hire an attorney one time. You can have an attorney that's your permanent stationary attorney that handles all issues related to your contractual agreements and how you run your business. So to me, you can clearly tell that there was a problem there, that there's a mixing of emotional feelings over business senses, business judgment. And then the other part I have is that, she said she fired him, which is fine. But when she fired him, I don't understand why he still wasn't having any income. Because if he's that involved and he's a co-label owner, then why isn't he getting a percentage off of what the profit that the business is bringing? He should still be getting paid something. And obviously by owning if he was an executive position, he should get his executive based salary, whatever that's supposed to be. If he's a shareholder in the company, he should be getting his profit. And so I'm not very clear based on everything she said, what the dynamics of their relationship is, but it clearly smells a little bit like the P-Square situation. And that's unfortunate because I don't know how many times we have to keep talking about this and this artists don't listen. They keep going back and doing the same thing. And then the result is the same. You can predict this stuff. It's not science. You could totally see what's going to come down the pipe. And so again, use your attorneys. That's what they're there for. They're there to predict. They're there to prevent, and then they're there to protect. That's their job. So you've got to use those services.
Yeah,
there's so many. Go ahead, Foza.
Yeah, so she spoke about the 45 million naira that he borrowed from somewhere, and there's an EFCC on. Now I'm just presuming, I'm painting a scenario. What if, and this is me, if Tee Billz allegedly says, I borrowed the 45 million naira to invest in 323 as a company, to manage the other arts and whatnot. And if Tiwa Savage is an executive director and a shareholder in that company, presumably she's also going to be under the same fire that EFCC is bringing for the 45 million naira on.
Abi.
Yeah. So my issue now is that if she did not know, and if he claims that this is for the business, it goes to show that there's actually no proper structure in terms of, flow of communication. This is how we take decisions, and it's just clearly mix of family and business if that situation happens. And it would be quite unfortunate, for her also as a brand, because she's a shareholder and the director in that company if it was for that purpose, basically. And it's already out in the open space that it was probably misappropriated for, whatnot. So yeah, that's another angle and scenario I just thought of, and I thought I should chip in.
Okay, great point, Foza. has one more point, and then I will chime in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you notice though, the misappropriation is what she's saying. So in some ways, I almost get this feeling that this interview was properly structured to kind of put some messages out there, Foza, put conditions for divorce out there, put notice about this 45 million. Look, I didn't know anything about this 45 million. No. And by the way, it probably wasn't used for anything that benefited me. And let me show you evidence, because she was talking about that 45 million. And then as she was talking, she goes, "Oh, should I talk about the fact that I caught him using cocaine?" As if the 45 million and the cocaine are connected, at least the way she talked about it. So I think in some ways this interview was intended to kind of put some flag points on some of these issues in advance, so that if the heat does come down, she can kind of claim the innocent spouse defense here.
Situation.
Yes, and claim that, this is not something that, she was aware. And again, that's why she's showing this history of all this irresponsibility, so that it's believable, so that the public can believe, the EFCC can believe, whoever she's dealing with can believe that, wow, truly, Tiwa Savage did not know this stuff. And so therefore she should not be on the hook. Now, if she's in California and she's getting a divorce, like I said, community asset, every asset you acquire during the course of your marriage is considered community. So are your debts. So those debts will be considered community debt, and she would be on the hook to pay for that, unless she can show, like Foza is saying, that those assets were not used for the community benefit, and she has to prove that. But if there was documentation signed or whatever, it doesn't clear her completely from owing that money to the people that, because they're not going to be on the hook for it. It's not their job to figure out whether you and your husband were on the same page and communicating.
I agree, and I also think that extends to business. And here are the two things I have a major problem with that interview. Number one, the timing, as I said, or maybe three things. Number two, the mental health issue, the glaring mental health issue, and I think such insensitivity shown. People may disagree with me, but I really strongly believe that. And then the third part has to be what is more of the business aspect and the firing. I don't understand the firing in any shape or form. And as Foza already indicated, it is it is defamatory to make such comments with respect to the EFCC without more facts than just your brother called you and said, Tunji is in trouble. Tunji is in trouble. He borrowed 45. This is his account number, da-da-da-da-da-da. And it underscores or illustrates the issue of lack of structure. But here's where I'm coming from with the firing on the business side of things. You have a business set up. And you have a co-owner in the business as well. And then you have the different part of you as a talent. So we're having three different areas subdivided here. We have the talent. The talent also acts as executive in her company, and the talent is also a shareholder. So if you're deciding to fire Tee Billz, are you firing him exclusively as the artist manager, or is it also artist manager and also executive and shareholder in his own business that he co-owns with you? Because to date, you haven't told us that he doesn't co-own that business with you. So it goes back to the point Ms. Nwan was raising. Well, dang, what happened then? How is this shareholder and this executive, of which we all agree you continue to make profit? People are hiring you for live performances. People are hiring you for everything else. If it was distrustful on the artist manager end, what's the problem on the executive end? You haven't filled in the gap on that part. On the artist management end, 15%, 25%, maximum 25% in terms of payment as artist manager contractually. But it doesn't stop there. Even at the termination of that contract, you still should, on the artist manager part, have a progressive phasing out of that income, so that regardless, in that short span of time that she's fired him, he should still be having income coming in from the artist manager relationship of all of the efforts he's put into getting Tiwa where she is. There is no denial in her video. She's explicit. I'm not going to deny that he has put in all the work he did to get me to where I'm at, independent of her talent. Okay, so how come he doesn't get income from that, from the artist manager's standpoint? How come he doesn't get income from the shareholder standpoint? How come he doesn't get income from the executive standpoint? Even if you cross out one, what happened to the other income? Why is it that this artist and co-owner of a business has this much power to take away an income overnight because there's certain issues in the business and it's never addressed? Also, I think if you're going to be a businesswoman and you want to claim that, hey, you're stealing from your wife, you're doing this, you're commingling funds, legitimate concerns, that's true. But be consistent with your business practices. You can't say business is how, this is how it should be one day, and then the other day it's different. So that goes back to your point and Uam's point. Where are your contracts evidencing your relationships? Where are your best practices in your business on how things work? How do you even handle issues of alleged, commingling of personal funds and putting extra money in your pocket? How do you handle all those things? So I'm really, really unsure about this part of firing him without any explanation of what's happening to money that should still continue to come to him on the artist manager side and certainly on the business side as a co-owner of the business. Ms. Uam, you wanted to add something?
What I was going to say was that, she kind of gives us an insight into that. She said he was wasting money. They were living above their means, right? He wanted to keep up with the Joneses. So maybe money was coming in and he was just spending and spending and spending and not saving and being, smart with his asset. So that could be one explanation. But the way he tells it, and I'm going more off of what he wrote, the fact that he's broke and all that stuff, he stepped out of her way to shine. You can step out of her way to shine, but do you have all those agreements in places so that you're still getting your own residual income coming from all those investments? And so again, I think Fosa said the same thing. We don't know, this is just kind of like little pieces there and there. So at the end, my conclusion is this. Revisit what we talked about in the P Square episode, because what we're saying is get your agreements in place, be serious about running your business as a business. Okay, irrespective of if there are family members involved in it, be serious about running it as a business and keep things clean. Because if you do that, then you can effectively fire a manager that's ineffective. You can effectively, put all and he can be taken out of the executive position. If you find that in his executive position, he's not doing his job well, or he's also usurping company assets for his personal gains and not going through proper channels of pay and everything, he can also be fired from that position. And frankly speaking, you can even have criminal charges also come against him. So, but run your business well so that you avoid this kinds of stuff, because now you're going to divorce. This is going to be messy.
Yeah.
Unless he plans on being cool about it. But if he's going to Yahweh if he's going to Yahweh for her, Yoruba word though, meaning crazy, go crazy on her, she can be living in lifetime of hell for quite some time. So people got to be smart. Hire your lawyers. Pay them the money. Is worth it. Don't think you're smarter. Don't think you get somebody to go do some boilerplate contract and throw it on your lap and you use that and you're smiling thinking you saved yourself some money. No. And then if you're an artist marrying somebody that used to be your manager, director, whatever his role was, please hire somebody else to take on that role. Don't intertwine love life and business together, because love life will trump business any time of the day.
Fosa, are you going to add?
Yes. I was going to the artist management. It just occurred to me that probably because most of the artist management contracts I've had the opportunity to review. I'm not the one I draft. Many people forget to include the post-term earnings clause. So I think probably that is the problem, because many artists believe that, okay, you know what, we're done with this relationship, we are done. They forget the fact that there are some contracts that we entered into before the expiration of this relationship that are still running. I'm still entitled to a certain percentage because I worked for that contract, or I orchestrated that contract. So a lot of people forget the post-term earnings clause. So probably I mean, let's assume they have a contract. Probably in that contract, there's actually no post-term earnings clause. So maybe from that angle, it will probably not be making money off Tiwa Savage as a brand or as an investment after the relationship has been terminated. But definitely as a director or the shareholder is still entitled to dividends but then again, it goes again that many companies in Nigeria rarely file annual returns or rarely declare profits because many of them don't even know if they're making profit or money. Many of the artists, like I always say, I don't think any artist in Nigeria is worth $1 million in profit, and I'll say that anywhere. No, in profit is different from making money. I explain to people that there's a difference between having your revenue and having, many people don't even understand the difference between your gross profit or your net profit. So these are the things that we try and explain to people every day, that there's a difference between your revenue and your profit. You need to declare your profit. You need to file your annual returns. A lot of companies are going down because they're not filing and they're not doing their taxes right. So these are issues that come up in businesses that I encounter every day. So I'm probably sure these are part of the issues that she's going to be facing. And as Ms. Uwam rightly stated, it's going to be a lot of issues when they're trying to unfortunately, I don't know, I've been asking my family law friends about the issue of property split under the Nigerian law, and many of them just tell me that it's just basically left to the courts, equitable and just and fair. But coming from the customary angle, I don't think the courts would probably be more inclined to probably excusing Tiwa to an extent. But immediately it happened, I was just like, if this were in the US, she's going to be in a lot of trouble, especially as she had a lot of fame before getting married. The prenup option should have been totally on the table. I don't know if they signed, if they did not, but that should have expressly be on the table, and it will have saved her a lot of stress by now. But in Nigeria, she might wriggle out a bit, but if she was in the US, it would have probably been a different story, So that's my 2 cents on that.
I'll have Ms. Uwam jump in just very briefly soon on the point you've just raised, but I just want to underscore, you call on the Nigerian end post-term clause. On the U.S. end and a lot of the other Western markets, we call it a sunset clause. That's a typical clause that's added in just for African artists in the diaspora or other artists that may be listening and wondering what that is if you see it in your contracts. Ms. Uwam, you wanted to shed some light on some of the points raised by Fosa.
Yeah, Fosa was talking about the equitable distribution for Nigeria, at least as she said that's what she's heard from some of her family or friends. And even, Fosa, even with an equitable distribution, the court still needs a good accounting and good understanding of what the assets are and what the debts are in that relationship in order to do equity. So at the end, you're going to need an actuarist or an accountant or a forensic accountant to really look through all these numbers, look through all these deals that she has out there, look at where this 45 million issue is coming from, who has it, how it was signed, how was it obtained with her consent, without her, all this stuff are going to come into the picture anyway. So in the end, it's still messy, even from a court's perspective, because no judge is going to sit down there and try to figure out all this mess. So you're going to pay the money to hire somebody to generate the report that the court is going to have to review to guide the court on how to make a decision.
All right. Everyone has referenced the Peace Square episodes. I want to make sure that people know what that episode is. That is episode number 74. That's where we break down working with family and the issues involved and hiring the right attorney and things of that nature, specifically when you're working with family and how to keep family and business. And then also getting a business mentor as well. And then episode 75 gets into more of that by talking about music publishing and specifically income derived from dealing with, income derived as an artist in the industry, and how you make money. And we cover 3 different specific areas of how you make money. In this instance, in this podcast, we've been really dealing more with the live entertainment income, which is primarily how artists make money in Nigeria. But Tiwa is no ordinary artist. She is very much entrenched in the U.S. system as well. Not only, as I already said, from L.A., California, etc., based there before moving, but she is signed to ASCAP, a collecting society here in the U.S. She is a singer-songwriter that's written for so many different artists, and some of those songs have made their way up in the charts, etc. And overall, a successful artist who's quite exposed to a lot of the music culture. She studied music business at the Berklee School of Music in the U.S., and that's a prestigious music school. So she's quite exposed, and it's quite interesting, even as a music business grad, that some of those things were not necessarily in place with her experience and exposure and traveling around the world. Final point to discuss in the big pocket area is criminal law and tort law issues, specifically focusing in on her statement about walking in on him snorting cocaine, particularly. Foza, criminal offense, is that certainly, well, let me frame it this way. What is your perspective? Is that defamatory, or do you think that that's just her giving an account and so it doesn't really matter? What are the implications for such an information being shared in the public?
I had this conversation yesterday with my friend, and she raised up the issue of defamation. I didn't really think about it from that angle, but then again, cocaine, Indian hemp, weed, and whatnot are all, they're all criminal acts in Nigeria. There are laws against them. There's the Indian Hemp Act, one very old law. But these are all. So when we had that conversation, I realized
hold on a sec, Foza. In the privacy of your home, what are the rules over there? I mean, if you're snorting cocaine in the privacy of your home, whose business is it?
You're an outcast.
Say that again.
You're an outcast. Everybody's strongly against drugs. It's strongly against everybody on the outside.
From a criminal law perspective over there, is it an offense to be in your home and be using?
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
Yes, it is. It's not. None of it is legal in Nigeria. None of it, even though it's now become a normal trend. But if you are caught outside with it, if the police catches you with any kind of substance in any kind of amount, you are going to be arrested for it. And so it's a crime in Nigeria, basically. So from that angle, yes, it can sue for defamation in terms of it can sue for defamation. Like, it can hurt my career, it can hurt my image. I can't work in any other place because everybody's going to tag me as irresponsible because I'm a cocaine addict and whatnot. But then again, the flip side to my own argument is you can't come if you want to. He who claims equity must come with clean hands. I mean, he has already damaged our own reputation and image outside already, so which can also hurt our career and hurt our own financial gains if that's the angle of argument. But defamation in Nigeria under tort law is very hard to prove. But in this situation, it might be probably a bit easy because it's on social media. The publication was on social media and travels faster than probably word of mouth or any other kind of publication. So that's my own view as regards that.
Mr. Wan?
Well, I'm looking at it from a holistic standpoint. So looking at the whole interview, was this particular information necessary in the context of the interview? And my response is no, because again, she could have effectively done and said what she needed to say without necessarily talking about his drug use. Now, had she talked about it in this context, and this is why I'm very confident that Tiwa Savage is not very educated about mental health. I'm just, based on everything and how she conducted and what she said, she's far from that, and she needs to get educated about that, even for her own son's interest, because he came out of his father now. So some of these things you don't want, I don't know what kinds he is, but if it is in fact some hereditary stuff you need to be concerned about, you need to educate yourself. So from that context is how I'm looking at it, right? So I don't see what the relevance of this. Now, had she said that as a person, she talked about mental health, focus on mental health, and said that his mental issues are further exacerbated because he's got some drug problems. And the interviewer said, well, what is his choice of drugs? And she said cocaine. Fine. And even then she doesn't necessarily have to even be that explicit about it. She could say he just has substance abuse. That's the extent of what I'm willing to share. And then she could say that because we all know, well, we all should know, right, that mental health issues can also be induced by substance abuse. Okay, substance abuse can make you have some psychosis problems. So especially cocaine for that matter. So it is well documented. Google search and see it. You'll see the information there that cocaine can actually make you, become very psychosis. So, so to that point, to that perspective, had she tied it in that way, I think that would have made more sense. Instead, she tied it in more into the 45 million, context that she was talking. And then the other thing is, since it's not legal in Nigeria, you gotta be smart about this interview, because at the end of the day, people are listening. The whole world is listening. You're a celebrity. So they're paying attention to these disclosures that you're giving. So what stops tomorrow a cop if they pick up your husband from wherever now? Yeah. Just to pull him over just to see, Nigerian laws are not as tight as America, where you need probable cause and all that kind of stuff to pull, the threshold that the police has to meet and satisfy to pull someone over before. Yeah, the enforcement part of it. So, what stops them from doing that, and then, end up finding whatever in his, his car or whatever and arrest him. So I just think you need to be careful with disclosures. We have to be careful that just because you're telling your pain and telling how someone hurt you and telling how, whatever was happening, let's not get too caught up in shaming. Shaming on his side is not okay, and shaming on your end is not okay. We know he has mental health issues. What's your excuse? You don't have mental health issues. So why are we conducting some of these conversations that maybe perhaps need to wait and don't need to be in the front of everything in light of what's going on at this point? So that's the take I bring to the table.
Okay, folks, we've covered a lot, and I'm going to have the attorneys give their closing remarks pretty soon. But let me just recap on what we started to do here. And the reason why we're doing this podcast is it's not just, a very myopic view where, okay, you just listen or you put stories about all the celebs on your blogs or wherever, or social media, and some people are having the joy of it and all that. This is about empowering the African artist, because let me make it very clear, from media to blogs to fashion, film, music, etc., if we don't nip some of these issues in the butt, we're not going to have a long-term industry. We've been there before. History repeats itself. It's not sustainable. 3 or 4 people that we started out this year with that are like amazing highlights for global relevance to say, hey, those are our artists. That's what Nigeria stands for. They're branding us good. And we've started mental health all the beginning of this year. First, Davido. I would even say Olamide and Don Jazzy, because they were crazy at that award show that they had no business being that crazy. But Davido with his baby mama drama. Then we went to the Peace Square brothers, Off the Hook, with Peter, complete mental distress, dealing with that. Then we even went to the Linda Ikeji and Wizkid stuff, and now we're dealing with this, with Tiwa. All of these people are major brand ambassadors. So these are really important issues. It goes beyond trying to split people left and right and what have you. It goes beyond even sometimes projecting your personal issues that you may have or experiences on them. It's about a long-term sustainable ecosystem where if you don't be a part of sharing, educating, and getting people to really understand the real issues behind this, guess what? You may not have that income that you're enjoying right now, because this artist, their success creates a lot of jobs for a lot of people in the industry. And if they're down, it's not good for everybody, bottom line. So we started off looking at that by looking at the family law, the mental health. We addressed all the different aspects of what Tiwa said, lack of care and cheating, lack of financial care of the child. We covered divorce as part of family law aspects, looked into that. Then we really delved into the business law aspect of it, and finally wrapped it up with criminal law and tort law. So I'm going to have final remarks from Foza, Attorney Foza out in Nigeria, and then Attorney Uwam out here in California, USA, and then we'll say goodbye. Go ahead, Foza.
All right. So thank you, Udwa, for convening this interview. And I personally learned a lot from both of you. But my final remark would be that, yes, the interview was probably not conducted in a very, professionally advised way in terms of legal implications and PR implications, which boils back to our conversation that everybody needs to get these people on your team. It's penny wise, pound foolish, trying to go on the internet and get theories to solve your issues when you have professionals and experts at your beck and call to do these things for you. And on a personal note, I hope both parties really get the help they need. And let me deviate a bit to the spiritual, because they go to my church in Lagos. I really wish and I really hope that they can turn to God at this time to help and comfort them and to help them to go through this situation, especially for the baby boy that is involved in this issue. And yes, I think, that'll be my final remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Wham?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of along the lines of Foza too. I think at the end of the day, what this shows us, whether it's P Square, Davido with Baby Mama drama, is that our artists are human beings. They have real feelings, real emotions, and they struggle with things. So let's stop idolizing them, number one, because when we stop doing that, their stories are not going to be as sensational to us, because we understand that this is everyday trouble, right? Some of us live around people who are struggling with these kinds of issues, or we've had relatives or had people who, Foster talked about a personal experience, but, we've also had that personal experience, a relationship that wasn't very healthy in the end. The woman ended up getting killed, and it was a very personal story for us and really hurt. And if the impact of that continues to live on to this day. So we need to recognize that our artists are human beings, and, give them the room to develop themselves and grow as people. They are going to make mistakes. We hope it's not stupid ones that really cost them a lot, but they have public images to protect. They have their brands to protect. So artists, you guys have to be smart. You have to have the right team around you, like Foza correctly pointed out. Invest your money in your lawyers. They're your best friend. Their job is to predict. Their job is to prevent. Their job is to protect, and in some ways also preserve. So you've got to use them. Use them wisely. Find the right people who know what they're doing, not just people who tell you they're doing something, but they don't have any idea. Ms. Uduak invites a lot of lawyers on this podcast, so you can go listen to some of this podcast, share with your friends, make referrals, and go use these lawyers. Get the right PR people. Oftentimes, an entertainment lawyer will also have an idea of good PRs to suggest to you. Suggest, not tell you which one to use, because we don't want to take on the responsibility that because someone didn't work for you, then it's our fault, right? So at least to give you a long list of potential good PR companies that you can use for your benefit. And also having good crisis management. Hopefully, most entertainment law firms have good crisis management as part of their practice. Hopefully they do, because I think they're in a better position to do that. Since they understand their client, understand their client's needs, understand the market that their client works in, so you can do a good crisis management stuff in helping them with that. But if you don't find a good crisis management firm that that does that and understands your market, when you're looking for a crisis management team, you want to make sure they understand your market. That's very, very important. Because understanding your market will mean that they can fix or help you fix whatever it is you're trying to fix in a more constructive and effective way. And then lastly, I'm going to say, be willing to go internally and handle your problems. The social media outlet is not the right place. We all have problems. If everybody got on there and started going on about their problems, you would jam up and shut down all of the social media outlets out there, because they can't take everyone. So you shouldn't be silent about it, but you also shouldn't think that the public sphere is a place to go deal with it. Go and get help. Talk to your doctors. Talk to people that that may be struggling with this issue, have confided in the past. Find out what resources they use. If you're someone who's been exposed to overseas and you can afford it, come over here, get the treatment, get it quietly, and take care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, this is a family. Before Tiwa Savage is an artist, she's a family. You know what I mean? She's a human being. So that needs to be preserved. That is a legacy that's going to live on forever. This music stuff is great, yeah, but a couple of years from now, there are a lot of generation that will not remember Tiwa Savage. But a couple of years from now, though, her children are going to remember Tiwa Savage. They're going to remember all the stuff that was out there about their parents. You know what I mean? So that would be my emphasis. And then for attorneys, I think that we are going through a change in our industry that I don't think we've all talked about yet. Standardly, when you go to law school, they teach you how to look at the client just as a client, right? What is the client's needs? You focus on their issue. Okay, so your client needs this, you work on it, and that's it. I think it's time to start looking at your clients holistically. And as entertainment attorneys, I think you can no longer just look at your client in this one linear way. You have to look at the overall, because if your client has a good family dynamics, they're going to produce good products, and they're going to have images that last for a very long time and can make them good money. And if your client is making money, so are you as a firm. So, and the successfulness of your firm is you being able to say, we represented Uduak, Oduak, X, Y, and Z, and we were successful at it. So I think we as attorneys have an investment in trying to take a more holistic approach to your client when they come through the door. Some clients are not going to be willing to do that with you. And if that's the case, then maybe you need to terminate that relationship, or make it clear that, look, I've advised you on all of this. I've given you this. You don't want this approach. Document that kind of stuff too, because, it's not uncommon for people to now tarnish your image as a firm, claiming that you didn't do anything for them when in fact, you were giving them good advice. So, but to pay attention to that, don't just focus on the money they're bringing you from their records. What's going on with them overall? Some of them have drug issues. You're well aware of it as the attorney representing the client, but you make no effort whatsoever to discuss that. We are in a position to discuss it because we can say, look, from the brand perspective, here's why drug use is a problem. From your album, and your audience and whatever, here's why. If your album is being bought by 15-year-old young kids, meaning that the money to buy those albums is coming from their parents. So if your image is drug user and all that kind of stuff, guess what? Their parents are not going to go spend that money to buy that CD for their kids. At least not in our culture. They're not going to want to. So we have leverage to bring that discussion into play, in the context of the artist brand and having the ability to do other streams of income and so forth. So I really, really encourage that for all attorneys that are listening to this to really tune into that. I'm not saying you should become a counselor, but I am saying you need to tune into this because this affects the pocketbook at the end of the day.
Okay, and my final words is, first of all, thank you to our wonderful, wonderful attorney guests that joined us today. Secondly, it all boils down to education. I think the industry has grown to the point where now the next passing on the baton has to be passing it on to lawyers. Lawyers now are the ones who take this industry to the next level. And a lot of that is education, not only on the side of the attorneys, but certainly on the side of the artists as well. While we're still trying to make sure that those lawyers are front and center, that platforms, conferences, all kinds of different things going are making lawyers the heart of a lot of these discussions. Because again, I always say you can't have the music business without talking about intellectual property issues. And in doing so, you got to go back to the lawyers who are interpreting legislation that directly affects you. So in understanding all that, the industry has picked with music business. We're doing all we can, and we've been able to get it to this point. Now we got to get it over the hill to the other point. And so we need our intellectuals. We need our music business people to work with our lawyers, among many industry professionals. We need to send a strong message to investors as well that, you know what, we are worth investing in. It's taken a long time for the average Nigerian artist to be recognized and the average African artist, because as we all know, education of science, law, technology, engineering has been what has been emphasized for a very long time. Now we're getting recognized, but the big part is financial investment in our industries. And a lot of investors, from banks to labels to others, are like, well, why should I invest in you? It's a conversation we're having. Why should I provide you structure? It's a conversation we're having. And we seem like we were doing good, but now we're showing, no, if you put an investment in me, you're going to wake up the next day and all of that is down the tube. So why would I want to give all that money to you? I need an ROI, return on investment. So we need to start thinking holistically. And then on the personal, Ms. Nwam already addressed it. And business too, Fuza already addressed it. I want to thank each one of you for your time. Nigerian bloggers, particularly in Nigerian media, please do not listen to this particular podcast episode and not share on your platforms, because it's not okay to continuously put all this crazy crap sometimes of our artists and our community on your platforms, encourage some really terrible comments about them, which a lot of them do read those comments, and you fail to educate the community. You're part of the ecosystem benefiting from the entertainment industry. And I think that at this point, you also have a responsibility to educate your platforms, because a lot of those reactions come from your platforms, especially those platforms with millions of views. This is where those artists regularly cite as their sources of pain. So please educate your audiences as well. Thank you all for listening. Until the next podcast episode, we'll catch you soon. Cheers.